You're being watched right now, not by some shadowy government operative in a van, by something far more efficient: cameras that read your license plate, algorithms that predict where you'll drive next, and devices that catalog every phone call you've ever made. This didn't happen overnight. The surveillance infrastructure that tracks your every movement took exactly 153 years to build, and most people have no idea how we got here. Let's start in 1862. The telegraph wire was America's internet. Messages flew across copper lines at speeds that seemed impossible. Then the Civil War broke out, and suddenly the US government realized something crucial. If information travels through wires, someone can listen to those wires. The first wiretap in American history wasn't sophisticated. Union telegraph operators physically spliced into Confederate communication lines, copied messages, then sent them along as if nothing happened. The Confederacy never knew. They kept transmitting battle plans, troop movements, supply routes, all of it intercepted. Here's what changed everything. That crude wire splice proved a concept that would echo for over a century. If you control the communication infrastructure, you control the information flowing through it. Fast forward to 1895. The telephone has replaced the telegraph. Alexander Graham Bell's invention is spreading across America, connecting homes and businesses. But there's a problem nobody anticipated: party lines. Most people shared telephone lines with their neighbors. Pick up your phone and you might hear Mrs. Henderson gossiping 3 houses down. Privacy didn't exist because the technology didn't allow for it. Police departments figured this out immediately. Why get a warrant when you could just pick up a phone and listen? The first documented police wiretap happened in 1895 in New York City. A police officer literally climbed a telephone pole, attached an induction coil to the line, and listened to bookmakers coordinating illegal bets. The case went to court. The judge ruled it was perfectly legal because there was no physical trespass. Read that again. No physical trespass meant no violation of rights. That precedent held for 33 years. Police departments across America tapped phones without warrants, without oversight, without any legal restriction whatsoever. The Fourth Amendment supposedly protected against unreasonable searches, but courts kept ruling that intercepting conversations through wires wasn't actually a search. Then came Prohibition. The 1920s turned America into a surveillance laboratory. Federal agents needed to catch bootleggers, and bootleggers used telephones to coordinate operations. Wiretapping exploded. The Bureau of Prohibition deployed wiretaps on a scale that made previous police efforts look amateur. Roy Olmstead was a former Seattle police officer turned bootlegger. He ran a massive operation, smuggling Canadian whiskey into Washington state. Federal agents tapped his phones for months, recording thousands of conversations. They built an airtight case. Olmstead was convicted based almost entirely on wiretap evidence. His lawyers appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. The question was simple: does wiretapping violate the Fourth Amendment? In 1928, the Supreme Court said no. 5-4 decision. The majority opinion, written by Chief Justice William Howard Taft, argued that wiretapping wasn't a search because agents never physically entered Olmstead's property. The wires were tapped from telephone poles on public streets. But here's the dissent that mattered. Justice Louis Brandeis wrote an opinion that would reshape surveillance law 40 years later. He argued that the Fourth Amendment wasn't about protecting physical spaces, it was about protecting privacy itself. The founders couldn't have anticipated telephones, but they absolutely intended to protect private conversations from government intrusion. Nobody listened. Not yet. For the next 39 years, American law enforcement wiretapped whoever they wanted. The FBI under J. Edgar Hoover turned surveillance into an art form. Hoover didn't just tap criminals. He tapped politicians, civil rights leaders, journalists, and anyone else he considered a threat. Martin Luther King Jr. had 16 different phone lines monitored simultaneously. The FBI recorded thousands of hours of conversations, looking for anything they could use to discredit him. This wasn't about solving crimes. This was about control. The technology evolved faster than the law. By the 1960s, bugs could be planted inside walls, transmitting conversations wirelessly. Parabolic microphones could pick up conversations from hundreds of feet away. Telephone switching systems became electronic, making wiretaps easier to install and harder to detect. Then in 1967, everything shifted. Charles Katz was a bookie operating out of a public phone booth in Los Angeles. FBI agents attached an electronic listening device to the outside of the booth and recorded his conversations. Katz was convicted. He appealed. The Supreme Court reversed 40 years of precedent. The Katz decision established that the Fourth Amendment protects people, not places. If you have a reasonable expectation of privacy, the government needs a warrant to invade that privacy. Physical trespass became irrelevant. This was the moment surveillance law finally caught up to surveillance technology. Congress passed the Wiretap Act in 1968, requiring law enforcement to obtain court orders before intercepting communications. For the first time in American history, there were actual rules. But technology doesn't stop evolving just because laws get passed. While Congress was writing wiretap regulations, engineers were building something that would make telephone surveillance look primitive: the computer network. ARPANET launched in 1969. 4 computers connected across 4 universities. Within 15 years, it would become the internet. And every single lesson learned from 153 years of telephone surveillance was about to be applied to digital communication on a scale nobody could imagine. The digital world didn't just amplify surveillance capabilities, it fundamentally changed what surveillance meant. When you make a phone call, you're creating a temporary connection between 2 points. The conversation happens, then it's gone. Nothing stored, nothing logged, except billing records. But digital communication works differently. Every email, every message, every click leaves a permanent trail. Data sits on servers. Routers log traffic. Internet service providers track connections. The difference isn't subtle. Law enforcement noticed immediately. By the mid-1990s, the FBI was already panicking about encryption. If criminals could send encoded messages over the internet, wiretapping became useless. In 1994, Congress passed the Communications Assistance for Law Enforcement Act, forcing telecom companies to build surveillance backdoors into their networks. The law required carriers to engineer their systems so law enforcement could intercept communications with a court order. Phone companies had to pay for the privilege of making their own networks easier to spy on. Then September 11th happened. Every restraint on surveillance evaporated overnight. President Bush authorized the NSA to monitor communications without warrants. The program started small, targeting suspected terrorists. It didn't stay small. Within months, the NSA was collecting data on millions of Americans who had zero connection to terrorism. They weren't just monitoring suspects anymore. They were monitoring everyone, building massive databases of phone records, email metadata, and internet traffic. Most Americans had no idea this was happening. The program was classified. Even most members of Congress didn't know the details. The few who did know couldn't talk about it without violating secrecy laws. This continued for 12 years. Then Edward Snowden walked out of an NSA facility in Hawaii with a hard drive full of classified documents. What he revealed wasn't just shocking in scale, it was shocking in sophistication. The NSA had tapped undersea fiber optic cables, collecting raw internet traffic from entire continents. They'd infiltrated Google and Yahoo data centers, copying everything. They'd built backdoors into encryption standards, weakening security for everyone just so they could spy more easily. One program called PRISM gave the NSA direct access to servers at Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, Facebook, and Apple. Another program called X-Keyscore allowed analysts to search through massive databases of emails, chats, and browsing histories without warrants. An NSA analyst could type in an email address and read years of correspondence. They could track someone's physical location through cell tower data. They could see who you called, when you called them, and how long you talked. The Fourth Amendment didn't just bend under this system, it shattered. The legal justification was creative. The NSA argued they weren't conducting searches because they were only collecting metadata, not content. Phone numbers you called, not the conversations themselves. Websites you visited, not what you read. But metadata tells a story. If I know every website you visited, every person you emailed, every location your phone pinged, I know more about your life than your closest friends do. Courts started pushing back, but slowly. In 2013, a federal judge ruled that bulk phone record collection likely violated the Fourth Amendment. In 2015, a federal appeals court said the program exceeded what Congress had authorized. Congress passed the USA Freedom Act, ending bulk collection of phone records, sort of. The NSA stopped storing the data themselves. Now they just ask phone companies to store it, then request access when needed. Meanwhile, local police departments acquired surveillance technology that would have seemed like science fiction 20 years ago. Stingrays, devices that mimic cell towers, and force nearby phones to connect, giving police your location and identification. Automatic license plate readers, mounted on patrol cars and street corners, photographing every vehicle that passes and storing the data indefinitely. Facial recognition systems, scanning crowds in real time. Ring doorbells, those friendly security cameras millions of Americans installed on their porches, have partnerships with over 2,000 police departments. Officers can request footage without warrants, and Ring encourages owners to comply. Your neighbor's security camera watching your front door might be feeding directly to law enforcement databases. The cycle that started with Alexander Graham Bell's telephone in 1876 has completed itself. Technology emerges. Law enforcement adopts it. Courts eventually impose restrictions. Technology evolves again, making those restrictions obsolete. The pattern repeats, each time with more data, more capability, more reach. The question isn't whether government surveillance violates the Fourth Amendment anymore. The question is whether the Fourth Amendment means anything at all in a world where privacy is technically impossible. You carry a tracking device in your pocket that logs your location every second. Your car records where you drive. Your smart TV watches what you watch. Your voice assistant listens constantly, waiting for commands. Every one of those data streams is accessible, sometimes with warrants, sometimes without. The legal framework is decades behind the technology, and it's falling further behind every year. Police can track your car using license plate readers without probable cause. They can access your DNA through genealogy databases you've never heard of. They can monitor your social media, your purchases, your search history. What started as a copper wire attached to a telephone pole in Seattle has become a surveillance apparatus more comprehensive than anything in human history. And most of it is perfectly legal. That's the world Alexander Graham Bell's invention built. Whether James Madison would recognize it as the republic he helped create is another question entirely. From telegraph wires in 1862 to artificial intelligence scanning your face in crowds today, surveillance technology has followed the same relentless pattern. Innovation arrives, law enforcement adopts it, courts catch up years later, and by then the technology has already evolved into something new. The Fourth Amendment was written to protect against soldiers searching your home without permission. Nobody in 1791 imagined a world where your phone would voluntarily broadcast your location every second of every day, where your car would log every mile you drive, where cameras would automatically scan and catalog your face as you walk down the street. We built this system ourselves, one convenient app at a time, one security camera at a time, one data sharing agreement at a time. The infrastructure is already here. It's not coming, it's operational. The only question left is whether we're okay with that. Most people haven't decided yet, because most people still don't know how deep this actually goes. Now you do.